Hello, everyone. I'm a little low in the camera. Let's tweak that. Okay, that's better. Now we're centered. Look at that. Streaming, it's a thing that works. Hello, everybody, and happy Daggerheart's first birthday to you all. Daggerheart was released 1 year ago today on May the 20th, 2025, and my life has never been the same, like quite literally. So that's kind of why I'm here to talk about the game and to celebrate Daggerheart. And in keeping with all of that, we already have some celebration being shared by the audience. So thank you, Jota Corvuja, for subscribing with Prime for 5 months, which is a lot. Thank you very much. And thank you to Magmalena for subscribing with Prime for 3 months. So we are already getting the birthday train rolling. And just for clarification, Darrington Press is streaming tonight at, I think it's 4 p.m. Pacific, so 7 p.m. Eastern. This is not related to that stream other than the fact that they're both celebrating Daggerheart, right? This is me doing my thing on my own to celebrate this game that I love very much and have a personal relationship to. So, hello, DM Rawlings. Happy Dagger Day is also a great exclamation. So thank you for that. In case we do any actual CGL work, just a reminder that these streams are not the property of Darrington Press or Critical Role. I'm not doing it on behalf of them. I don't speak for either company. This is just me talking about a game that I love from my own personal perspective. And we've got this up here, which I guess let's pretend that it's like a birthday celebration thing. If you have not heard, there are going to be, or there are already starting, I think 2 days ago, games on Start Playing that you can sign up for to play a new Daggerheart adventure called The Wish Thief, which was released to Start Playing GMs who signed up for the event and were approved, as well as to folks that are running that game or that adventure at participating Darrington Press guild stores. Again, that's a thing that's happening separate from me. It's just I want to spread the news there. I am going to be running one instance of the Wish Thief, but for people who are already signed up for stuff that I've done on SPG previously, because I am also a week and a half away from a deadline for the Dungeons of Drakkenheim Daggerheart campaign guide. So I don't have a whole lot of extra time to do things. Otherwise, I might try to run the Wish Thief a few more times or do some other stuff to celebrate the game. Basically, making time for this stream was what I had time for. But the plan for today is that I'm going to talk about Daggerheart's release, what has happened with Daggerheart since release, what Daggerheart has meant to me, right, has meant and continues to mean in terms of my career as a game designer and creator in the kind of broader geek world. And then I'll do a couple of giveaways. Currently, if you have not heard, I am offering my Daggerheart compatible adversaries book, Menagerie of Mayhem, for an extra discount. It is now just $9.90 USD, and that's on DriveThruRPG, itch.io, and Heart of Daggers. So if you haven't already picked up a copy of Menagerie of Mayhem, you can do that now. It's Andrew Bowman. Did you know, dear audience, that Andrew did the incredibly cool title logo and cover design of Menagerie of Mayhem, as well as doing branding, cover design, and additional art, including the map for Bastion of Hope. So shout out to Andrew. Thanks for hanging out. Yeah, Tanya's art, absolute MVP, easy to work with, I would imagine. So that is that. Double checking my notes here. Josh versus Wall, or Josh vs Wall, subscribed with Prime a couple weeks ago. If I didn't shout that out during last stream, thank you for doing so now to make sure that everybody is celebrated and thanked for their contributions. So that's that. I don't have like a specific topic or theme other than hooray Daggerheart, and the stuff that I've talked about. So the stream will be pretty freewheeling and casual. So hop in and out at your leisure. But I was delighted to realize that Daggerheart's birthday was on the day of the week that I already do streaming anyway. So that made it really easy. Also, you can see that I found my copies of the Daggerheart limited edition. They were packed along with approximately 1 million other books. And we have been slowly unpacking since we moved to Chicago just over a couple of months ago. Turns out that when you move hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books, it takes a while to unpack them. Jota asks, what would you like to see in the future of Daggerheart, either from Darrington or third-party publishers? That's a great question, right? I don't dictate anything to Darrington, right? I worked as a freelancer for them. There are certainly things I would love to see from Darrington in terms of official materials. Some of the things that I'm looking for have already been announced, right? There are going to be more campaign frames, both in Hope and Fear and other frames that might be released separately, right? Like With Love and Magic, I think is the title of the Romantasy campaign frame that they announced, I think, last year at Gen Con. In terms of stuff from Darrington, I think I'd love to see more Daggerheart merch, because I think that would be fun, right? Like, have a t-shirt that says, like, I have 12 fear, or I'm going to spend a fear would be really fun. I don't have access to any of their financials in terms of, like, what does it take to make merch. I think we may see third-party merch that's talking about, like, fear points and spending fear and things like that, and that would be pretty cool. I am curious whether they will make a dedicated adversary book, whether that is one that wraps up or binds up adversaries from the core book and Hope and Fear and then adds new ones, or whether that is something totally separate. There's definitely been demand and excitement for just more adversaries, lots more adversaries from players and GMs that I've heard talking about the game on Reddit or on, in other communities. So I think a dedicated adversary book would probably be very well received. Whether that's high on the list of things that Darrington wants to make, that I couldn't say. Things that I would love to see from third parties is I would love to see other companies take a whack at what they think a book length or long form Daggerheart compatible adventure looks like, right? I'm working on what will be probably one of the first multi-100 page adventures for Daggerheart, and possibly the first campaign guide for Daggerheart released in partnership with Critical Role that is just for Daggerheart, right? Because the City of the Black Rose book is already out or will be out very soon, and that was designed for both Daggerheart and 5e, right, in one book. Firsts or not aside, I think that while I'm very excited about what I'm doing in the Drakenheim book, and I have great material to work from that Monty and Kelly created for the actual play and then for the original 5e book that I'm kind of reinterpreting both. There's not going to just be one good way to make a Daggerheart campaign guide, right? I think there are already people who don't use campaign frames at all, and they do everything themselves. There are people who use campaign frames as this jumping off point, and like the metaphor that I use of the sourdough starter, right? They take a frame, they don't need anything else, they create everything else together and at the table. But I think there are also going to be people who want more than a frame, but less than 100+ page book. And then I think that there are people who will want a larger book, but they won't want everything spelled out, right? They maybe don't want fully written plot beats. Maybe they want a Daggerheart, a sandbox designed for Daggerheart without one particular plot, or a campaign guide with a lot of different options. So I want to see companies like, but not necessarily exclusive to, Kobold Press, Roll and Play, Hit Point Press, Mage Hand. Ghostfire's already doing it, but maybe another one. And then I would also love to see new companies stepping into the spotlight and say, hey, we have a vision for what a Daggerheart book can be, right? A Daggerheart compatible book if it's using the CGL, or a Daggerheart book if it's in partnership with Darrington, so that there isn't the perception of, or the expectation of, just one way of making material for Daggerheart in terms of adventures, because I don't think I want to only publish one approach, right? The version I'm doing for Drakkenheim is the one I think is best for that material. I have also been working on adventures separate from that are going to take a different approach or a different scope and scale. And then even separate to that, I have already worked on or led adventure material that is official material, right? As an additional designer on the Quick Start adventure and as lead designer of Marauders of Windfall. So I have taken different approaches based on the needs or the expectations of, the company I'm working for, or the format of the material itself. So I want to see people not feeling like they have to do just one, make Daggerheart adventures in just one way. I want to see a breadth of material. I want to see more weirder, different stuff in the same way that I have been delighted by material from Jack Panic or Dungeon Club, where he's done a Loki TVA Control SCP-esque kind of corporate time travel horror adventure hack of Daggerheart, as well as the more like suburban horror version that there's going to be another actual play of it, but I don't remember the title just right now. Jack, in fact, does never miss. So I've been going on for a bit. I want to jump back into chat. Adversaries and environments are well needed, says DM Rawlings, for sure, right? My next solo creator-owned project, or solo designer creator-owned project, is a book of Daggerheart compatible adversaries, which I'm hoping to get out in the summer, ? Part of it will depend on workload for getting the Drakkenheim book over the finish line. Yeah, different takes on adventures. DM Rawling says. NS Men says, I've run a lot of the WotC 5e adventure modules, and I feel like I prefer less structured material these days. I think my favorite things tend to be lore, interesting ideas, and some tools like environments and adversaries. Absolutely. Yes, How's My Driving is the other Jack Panic thing. Thank you, Jota. I haven't gotten to watch all of that actual play, but the folks at the Panic Table make just incredibly well-produced actual play material. Environments is a part of Daggerheart that I think I'm especially proud of working on, because I had a hand in kind of developing what the environments framework looks like and how it works, and then designing environments for the core book. I've been doing environment design for the Drakkenheim book, of course, as well, because it's a part of Daggerheart. But I think there's more different stuff to be done with environments as well. I think there's great adventure design structure and paradigms to be done with environments, and I'm seeing some of that in third-party creations using the CGL already, but I would like to see more. DM Rawling says, New Weird is dope. I don't remember if that's a reference to something I've said in the stream, but I concur that the New Weird is dope. You can't see it here because it's up. So if I push my camera up here real quick, you will see that novel right there with the little person, that is a novel of mine called Shield and Crocus, which is a New Weird novel. New Weird and superheroes, going like this is what I did with it. DM Rawlings asks, how do you feel about adversaries that are groups with a theme, like the pirates and Dagger Thief people, I would say that's probably the Jagged Knife Bandits. I really like themed groups. I think that, or I've done some themed groups in Menagerie of Mayhem, right? The Umbral Hunting Pack, the Congregation of the End, the Grinning Legion. Some of them are just like 2 or 3 adversaries in a group, and some are more. I would like to do more group adversary design. The thing I think group adversary design does is it lets a designer say, here is a set of game pieces or design elements that are made to go together, and you can just take and plop into a scene or a sequence knowing that they are meant to work together and support one another, and that it can be really handy. I've seen definitely a variety of people's thoughts and responses to adversary groups. Some people would rather adversaries in Daggerheart be fully always the most generic possible, right? That it would be, instead of Jagged Knife Bandit, it would be Bandit, right? And instead of maybe Juvenile Flickerfly, it would be, right, like Bug Dragon. There are also people who like the specific flavor, whether that is the Flickerfly or these other elements. And again, I don't think there's just only one way of designing and theming adversaries, because there are going to be some people who want to use the specific themes, and there are going to be some people who just want the stat block and the mechanical themes, and then they're going to put their own fiction on it. Yeah, Ennisman, I have an environments book coming for you. Most of them are written. I just need to write a few more and get the production process rolling. I have not been able to make the time or mental energy for that because of working on Drakkenheim, but it's coming. Magmalena says, I've seen really creative takes on environments that can be fit together to form the backbone of adventures. A question of clarification there. You've seen takes on environments that have already been used to fit together to create adventures, or that you think could be fit together? If it's the former, I would love if you could throw a link or two into the chat, because that's definitely stuff that I'm on the lookout for. Right, I think my friend and colleague Carlos Cisco, who is also an additional designer on the Daggerheart core book, has been doing really cool things with adversaries and environments and other stuff in his Pistol Heart supplement series that folks should definitely check out. The other environments book that I've been impressed by is Wondrous Environments by, I believe that's Runic Press. I'm sorry, Gethin, I don't 100% remember the name of the press that you publish with. Captain Cosmo, happy birthday, Daggerheart! Yes, thank you very much. We are celebrating Daggerheart here. Darrington Press has their own birthday stream for the game starting in a few hours, and I will be tuning into that as much as I can, though I have a game of Daggerheart tonight. Thankfully, this is a game I get to be a player in, because the other 2 games of Daggerheart I am the GM for, and getting to be a player is good and restorative and is helpful because it keeps me in touch with that side of the game. Jota says, I would love more flavor in the adversaries since Daggerheart's a little shy about imposing a setting. Understandable since we have a lot of different campaign frames. Sure. I think that in the adversary supplements or in the adversary third-party space, we're probably seeing some more flavor, right? Like Chris Davidson or Right Knight to Fight has done a dark fantasy, Dark Souls inspired setting where he has an adversaries book and now 2 adventures in that setting. So there's some specific theming there. There's the weird fantasy Western adversaries in Pistol Heart and things like that. Okay. Thank you for those links, Magmalena. I am going to open them in tabs to go and look at after this adventure. Or after this stream. Adventure lies ahead. I've arrived to lurk. Happy lurking. Thank you for being here. And Enesman says, also not sure if anyone else saw, but there's a YouTuber, Rob John's Lair, who did a retrospective of their 5 Banners Burning campaign. It was cool. I've heard of Rob John's videos that are like basically actual play as demonstration videos, but I had not seen that video about 5 Banners Burning. I will have to check it out since, of course, I have a close relationship to 5 Banners Burning creatively, having been the designer on that frame. It's been very fun to see the degree to which, or how many people have picked it up as a frame to build their game from. I'm very glad that it seems to be doing the thing that it was meant to do. Now I'm going to take a drink here, so I'm going to mute myself to spare you the audio. So in terms of other things I'd like to see for Daggerheart, I think there's more work to be done in terms of using campaign frames to build out mechanical design space in different directions. I have some early notes and a domain wheel for a Daggerheart compatible mech game where the domains are like different types of mech systems and modules and weapons, and then the classes are classes of mech, where they are still the intersection of 2 domains, but those domains are things like claw and bombard, right? So new domains, different classes, but there's a lot more work to be done there. That would probably end up being a whole separate game that is Daggerheart compatible, like the New Unknown that folks have been crowdfunding. That campaign is going well. I'm very happy. I think what we'll see from Darrington, I couldn't really tell you what that swath or what that slate of material looks like. We might hear some of what it's going to be today. I would expect we are more likely to hear about or be given a roadmap at Gen Con. But again, that's all speculation. I don't have inside knowledge in terms of this is when they are planning to do XYZ, telling people things like that, right? That's all handled internally. And if I did know about it, I wouldn't be able to tell you because of an NDA. And that's just how things are, and that's fine. In terms of what the game has meant to me and some specifics there, I'm going to kind of cast my mind back to May the 20th of last year, right? The game comes out. I do a stream, I think on launch day, where I'm talking about some of my experiences working on the game and talk about how to make and use campaign frames. No, actually the very first stream was just like a launch celebration. And then how to make and use campaign frames came shortly after that. Making videos about Daggerheart, how I approach playing it and designing for it, took my Twitch and then especially my YouTube from a thing that I do every so often and it gets a little bit of pickup to my Daggerheart videos are doing incredibly well on YouTube, right? Orders of magnitude more views than stuff that I've been doing previously. My YouTube was not especially big, right? I had fewer than 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, but in the 2-3 months following Daggerheart's release, the channel goes over 1,000 views. I start being able to kind of make a little bit of money from YouTube. People are coming in. There's a lot of attention. There's interest in Daggerheart. People are excited about excited to hear about what I think about the game, how I approach it. Kind of to Magmalina's question, do you think there's a need for more how to Daggerheart material? I feel like there's a lot of people running games where it still feels like a lot like D&D using Daggerheart rules. Still incredibly fun, but sometimes feels like it's missing the Daggerheart boat. I could definitely see that, right? People are coming to the game from a variety of backgrounds. I would love to make a GMing Daggerheart book, right? Maybe not the official GM's guide, right? Because that's something Darrington would have to commission me to do, and their plans are their own. But I think I have I have enough thoughts now that I could probably put together a pitch for a 100+ page book on how to GM Daggerheart. The trick would be, if it's not from Darrington Press, it would have to be how I GM Daggerheart, right? Because I wouldn't be speaking on behalf of the company. I'd still be happy to do that, but I would need to be really careful that I'm not trying to like present a book as an official book when it's not. Captain Cosmo says, we should start putting up canaries for any scenarios, however unlikely they are. You mean like canary in a coal mine? We should treat our canaries well. Those canaries save many, many lives. And from what I hear, the miners tended to love and care for their canaries, but also put those canaries into a lot of danger. So I'm a little conflicted. DM Rawling says, I'm very much looking forward to the high school frame in Hope and Fear, but I'm biased as a big Slug Blaster fan. Big same. I am also a Slug Blaster fan. My copy of the Slug Blaster Deluxe box is somewhere here. It's unpacked. I just don't know where it is. So I was very excited to hear about is it Castle High is the name of that frame, maybe? I'm excited for that one. I'm hyped to varying degrees about all of those campaign frames, right? The big high complexity heroic fantasy one with like hex crawl stuff is exciting. I'm definitely hyped for the kind of Bloodborne inspired frame that Carlos developed, because I like Carlos and I like Carlos's work, and I like that those vibes, right? Bloodborne is probably Bloodborne and Elden Ring kind of go back and forth in terms of being my favorite of FromSoft's Soulsborne games. But I'm excited about that one. And as a folklore, as someone who has a folklore degree, I am contractually required to be hyped about a fairy tale themed campaign frame. I'm especially hyped for that one in its collaborative big bad making system. I want to see what that is like, and then probably steal it for games of my own, right? For campaigns that I run. The Hexcrawl one has Earthdawn vibes, and I'm intrigued. That's a good point. Earthdawn is a game that I've kind of been peripherally aware of, but never really dug into in a big way. Unfortunately, too many games and not enough time. And DM Rawlings also said earlier, I'd love to write a book about consequences that would tap into Daggerheart a bit, including Forged in the Dark, PBTA. Yeah, I think if I made a GMing book for Daggerheart or for use with Daggerheart, I would be talking a lot about the GMing and design philosophy, my GMing and design philosophy as is informed by Forged in the Dark and Powered by the Apocalypse design traditions, right? I don't have as much, or I do not have the experience with Cortex that that other designers who kind of brought that experience to Daggerheart have, right? I can only speak from my own experience and my own approach. And again, I don't think there's only one right way to GM Daggerheart. I think there are a lot of different ways to interpret it, but I think that there is probably still a need for some people, more explicit and specifically written support material, right? I've done a lot of videos talking about how I approach GMing Daggerheart, but I have not gotten to do as much writing because my writing has been focused elsewhere. So if you're an RPG related book publisher and you want me to write a how to GM Daggerheart book or GM tips for Daggerheart book, you are welcome to email me and I would love to talk. I am very busy right now, but the future is long. So I think right? If I were going to make a bet about what comes next for Daggerheart, right? We have the Hope and Fear book. I would guess that the next book from Darrington, and again, no special knowledge in this guess, would be either the book from one of Chris Perkins or Jeremy Crawford. I would bet that that's probably the next book that comes out from them, because it was the thing I think we heard about the earliest compared to other projects. We do know that Keith Baker's setting / world book is kind of has been moving along because an event for it has been announced at Gen Con. The setting is called Night Market, and I have signed up for a ticket to go and watch that event. So I'm excited to hear about that from Keith and his collaborator, whose name I do not recall, and I'm very sorry to that collaborator, because to the best of my knowledge, it's the two of you working on this together rather than Keith Baker starring other person. So I want to give equal weight there to what I believe to be co-creators in that situation. If that's not the case, then I apologize. Captain Cosmo says, ideal would be an official adventure that could be used in multiple campaign frames, but that might be a bit too difficult. I think that would be a challenge, but I definitely get the idea, right? Can you present a heroic fantasy adventure that is longer than Sablewood Messengers or Marauders of Windfall, or longer than I expect Dying Spire to be, longer than The Wish Thief? Something that's meant to be played over the course of 6, 7, 10 sessions, but present it in a way that it can be ported into any number of settings. I could see what that looks like. I think it could be a challenge, right? Because if Sablewood, Dying Spire, and Marauders of Windfall are kind of presented as 3 connected adventures, if there were another 2, 3, or 4 of those, that together gets into that longer form adventure size that we'd be talking about. And in my opinion, you could put that into a number of places. You just need to put the Sablewood into your setting, right? Because it's the Sablewood Messengers. And that would make sense because the Sablewood location is available for free on their website, and the Sablewood has been, Sablewood has not. Something else that would be interesting to see is whether the other locations from the Daggerheart beta are re-released or packaged into something, right? Because we had the Sablewood, and then there were several other locations across the span of tiers. Now, those were mostly written for the beta versions of the Daggerheart rules, so there would need to be updates, right? So there would be work in that. But I know during the beta, there were people who said, I'm treating these locations like they're all in the same world, and then that's a setting, and they're engaging with that. Yeah, Night Market has some Duskwall vibes. I can definitely read that, and I think you could read it toward that direction, even if it doesn't end up being kind of the way that that team has envisioned it. City powered by ghosts. You're in a pretty similar territory there. Captain Cosmo says, yeah, I started with Sablewood Messengers, then homebrewed a bit of Age of Umbra into the setting. Yeah, I think, right, the hybrid animals part in Sablewood already speaks a little bit to that like transformation element that's in Age of Umbra. And if you put the Sablewood into Age of Umbra, I don't know that you'd have to work especially hard to pull Sablewood into that tonal space, though you would have to do work to do that, because I don't think, for me, Sablewood as presented is always already or automatically a dark fantasy setting, right? Or like a grim fantasy setting. So it'd be fun to get more officially published locations, whether that's in a campaign guide or on their own or something like that, right? Locations or a structure that's similar to it is something that I've been thinking about with expansions on or sequels to the Bastion of Hope campaign frame, right? If I get the chance and the support to expand on that setting, which I am intent on doing. The question is how much can I do it and when, because I have too many projects. And the thing that I have learned, looping back around to this year and me and Daggerheart, the game comes out, the CGL or like the homebrew kit comes out, and I'm working on adapting Bastion of Hope to become a Daggerheart campaign frame. That was the first specifically for the CGL project that I did, and I learned working on it that some of the project management parts of publishing games material at that scale are things that are really hard for me. And there's some lessons I had to learn that I now feel more confident and comfortable doing those things, and I have more practice doing them. But part of what it will take for me to be able to publish the Daggerheart compatible material that I want to publish at or closer to the rate that I would like to do so is finding partners, whether that is an artist partner to collaborate with, whether that is a publisher to publish some of the stuff with, ideally in those cases, like publish it with them, but then retain ownership, right? As opposed to work for hire, where I create something and then sell it fully to somebody else for them to sell. Work for hire has paid a lot of my bills. I am fine to keep doing some work for hire, right? Drakkenheim is work for hire, and it's been a great experience. But if I found publishing partners for some of my creator-owned stuff, that could also be great. Yeah, DM Rawlings, I think, right, there's some stuff in the Sablewood write-up that already could gesture toward the Age of Umbra things. So I think you're dead on there that like there's a vector to do it. Speaking of Age of Umbra, if you haven't already seen, Critical Role posted a YouTube short announcing the start date of a new Age of Umbra actual play series, miniseries, that is going to be on July the 7th. And I think it's a 6-episode miniseries. So I really enjoyed watching Age of Umbra the first miniseries last summer. And I'm expecting that I will be excited about this next show. It seems like it's going to be mostly a separate story, so a good place to pick up for somebody who's interested in the setting. It would also be a great time for people to publish new dark fantasy adversaries and environments to kind of go along with that, right? Age of Umbra is not in the CGL or in the public game content, but you could publish a book of dark fantasy adversaries and environments, right? And you'd still be in the clear in terms of the CGL. So I worked on Bastion of Hope and learned a lot of lessons in terms of production and project management. Hard-fought lessons that I'm very grateful to have done. I'm working on that. I was also working on the Adversaries book that became Menagerie of Mayhem. And because of the type of work that it was, and because of a bunch of different other factors, Menagerie of Mayhem I was able to get out first, thanks in part to Andrew for the assistance given that I mentioned previously in terms of cover design, and then working with Irving Benitez and then Luna P in doing layout and using Tanya Herrera's art. I get Menagerie of Mayhem out, and between when Daggerheart comes out and when I have released Menagerie in January, I've been doing these Daggerheart videos, right? How I approach the game, how I design for the game, sharing some of those designs, my GMing and play philosophy, analysis of existing material, and that continues to build this platform. And then in the fall, right, in September, October, I'm approached by Ghostfire Gaming when they asked me if I would be interested in leading the design on, thanks for coming, DM Rawlings, see you around, if I'd be interested in taking on the challenge of adapting Dungeons of Drakkenheim for Daggerheart. And the fact that I had kind of grown, that I developed a positive reputation related to Daggerheart is because of folks like you who are watching, people who watched my previous videos, folks who were patrons over at my Patreon, to the point that when my involvement in Dungeons of Drakkenheim was announced, the responses that I saw were very positive, which was incredibly heartening and encouraging to me, and I hope encouraging to Ghostfire as well. They've been great to work with and have had nothing but confidence in me, which is really cool. So I get to October, November, and I've been doing the work and developing material, and I get this new big spotlight on me, right, in November of last year, because PAX Unplugged was early, right? Monty, Kelly, and I were asked to kind of come to the Daggerheart presentation at PAX Unplugged so that the team, the Darrington Press team, could kind of have a stand up and point us out in terms of talking about the Dungeons of Drakkenheim book in partnership with Darrington. So doing the videos, developing my own stuff, working and releasing material on Patreon, then the Ghostfire job for Drakkenheim, right? We get that announcement. The Kickstarter is happening. So there was a big groundswell for me leading into the release of Menagerie of Mayhem #1 in January. And going in, I was confident that the work was good. I did not know how big the demand or response would be, right? I was like, okay, I know this is good work. It's a smaller adversary book as opposed to, here's a book with 100 adversaries. But there was such a hunger for adversaries, and I would like to think a fair bit of it is that I've made a good name for myself in creating Daggerheart compatible work. Menagerie of Mayhem completely blew away my sales expectations, right? It is just about, it may today or sometime in this next week hit 500 sales on DriveThruRPG, and has sold over 1,000 copies overall across DriveThru, itch.io, and Heart of Daggers. It is, to my knowledge, one of the highest selling paid products on Heart of Daggers. Matt, you can confirm or deny that publicly or not. No obligation on that whatsoever. Run your business the way you want to. I've largely been happy with the way you've run your business, so we're cool. Everything's good there. So Menagerie blows up, and I already had Bastion of Hope in production. I already had some environments that I had been doing on streams or developing on my own, and while working on Drakkenheim, was able to get Bastion of Hope across the finish line and release it late last month. I have the environments book that I've talked about that I'm hoping to get out over the course of the summer. Right now where I am is hoping to release kind of creator-owned books, 3 or 4 a year, potentially plus other projects published with other groups, right, or published in collaboration, because I think my individual capacity for publishing these small books is 3 or 4 a year, right? Books that are about 30 to 40 pages, new volumes of Menagerie, new environment books, new zines for Bastion of Hope or something like that, right? I can handle about that much on my own. But as partnerships develop, and there's some discussions happening on a couple of fronts there, I'm hoping to be able to release even more. And that might be release a few books myself, release 1 or 2 books in partnership, and do some freelance, right? Maybe that's work for hire or things like that. That last part, of course, depends on what the demand is, right? If we get to Gen Con this year and Daggerheart is having another spike of growth, I may get to talk with some other publishers, get a sense of what material they want to either convert or new material they want to present, either in partnership with Darrington or just on their own using the CGL. And that's kind of what I think the near future or the next year looks like, right? I'll turn in Drakkenheim, we'll do the revisions. That fulfillment on that book is scheduled for, I think, November of this year is what the Kickstarter says. I'm not in charge of the production side of that, right? It is published by Ghostfire. I am, at some point, my creative contributions will end and the book will just get made and published and sold, and that will be more out of my hands because that's not the role that I have with that project. But I'd be very interested to see whether by or at Gen Con we see some other projects announced, right? Do we see or hear some other company announce a big Daggerheart project, right? We have stuff that's on Kickstarter, Demon Heart, there's the Heart of Cthulhu project, right? So things are happening. Some of those are from publishers that have done other things, done 5e compatible books, but for my money, neither of those nor the New Unknown are on the same level profile-wise as Kobold Press or Paizo or Chaosium or, these other, maybe that's other publishers that have done a lot of 5e compatible work or other publishers. If some of those other higher profile publishers announce that they are either doing partnership books with Darrington or doing books on their own using the CGL, that will be a big sign that the excitement about Daggerheart has reached the point that other companies say, we want to get in on that and we're excited about it, to the level of putting it onto our list where we could do another 5e book, but we're going to do a Daggerheart book for some of those companies, or we could do anything and we're going to do a Daggerheart compatible book. Captain Cosmo says, I'm looking forward to the New Unknown, but I also want to see how feasible it would be to convert Neon Odyssey to Daggerheart when it comes out. Neon Odyssey is, I love the look of it. If it is as big in terms of word count as Crooked Moon was, and from what I remember hearing about that Kickstarter, Neon Odyssey is just so much material, right? Jota Corvuja says Neon Odyssey is too big. So if I were going to pitch the Legends of Evantris people on adapting Neon Odyssey, a big part of it would probably need to be, we're going to condense down to what the Daggerheart presentation of this looks like, right? Because I don't know that I would say a Daggerheart presentation of Neon Odyssey would need as much material. That's how I would pitch it right now. Legends of Evantris people, if you want to talk with me more about it, you're welcome to do so. It is easy to find my email, and if not, then just ping me on Blue Sky. I did not expect this video to turn into me pitching myself for work, but why not? Andrew Bowman brings up a great point. Says, I'm super interested to see what the push for third-party Daggerheart as a part of Darrington's partnership in RPG Party, right? What does that look like? How many Daggerheart compatible projects will get approved for RPG Party? What is Darrington's level of investment? To what degree are they promoting it on their various channels? How much of a big deal is it for them? Are those books being considered for direct partnerships, or are they CGL books that are then getting some extra spotlight and support from Darrington, or is it some other presentation? I genuinely don't know. And Darrington has a lot of things going on, so there's only so many hours in a day, and I want very much for the Darrington staff for them to not be overworked, right? I want them to be able to live, have full lives, be healthy. There's lots of hunger for more material from Darrington, but having worked with these folks and knowing what it's like to kind of push yourself to your limits, I want for all of these people and for everybody working in RPGs to be able to work within reasonable limits and to live your life, have other things going on, spend time with your family, take care of the people you need to take care of, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Captain Cosmo says two-ish subclasses per class. If that's for Neon Odyssey, I could see that approach. I think subclass design is probably an area where there is a lot of room for growth in Daggerheart. I have seen a few products that add new subclasses, but honestly, I feel like I've seen more CGL material that is, here is a new class or here is a new domain and a new class, than I have seen, here are just new subclasses. Which is interesting because for my money, domain design is probably one of the hardest parts of Daggerheart compatible design. And I mean, great work to you if you can create a domain that confidently sits alongside the 9 domains in the core book and then probably alongside Dread. However Dread ends up sitting in terms of CGL or anything like that. I have done a little bit of new subclass design in my own work. I haven't highlighted it a lot because I've been working on new class design. Class design, I think, is very hard, but probably for me, not quite as hard as new domain design. And the classes that I've been working on have been other classes using the existing 9 domains that are in the core rulebook, right? My Warden class, Herald class that I'm actually playtesting in my home game that is Grace plus Splendor, and then a few other classes, some of which I'm playtesting in a different game, and some I haven't gotten to playtest just yet. Yeah, Tales of Untold Paths has a subclass for each core class, and some new domain cards. I picked up Tales of Untold Paths last week when it released. I haven't gotten to give it a really thorough look through. One of the things I was considering for today was more of a hands-on overview of some Daggerheart compatible projects that have been released. I didn't have the time to kind of do the prep for that. Maybe that's something that I'll get to do in June, because I think it would be cool and it would be fun to get to spotlight some projects that I think are doing cool things, but have maybe not gotten as much attention in the broader Daggerheart play communities as some other material. Captain Cosmo says, one thing I would probably try to keep would be all the ancestries. Yeah, I think the Daggerheart core book ancestries can work in a space opera setting, right? Some of them maybe get a little bit of a tweak. Clanks probably work differently in a space opera setting, but most of the others you could do. I have for some time joked about Laserheart, the hypothetical analog to Daggerheart that is space opera. Using, and this is again all joke, not no insider knowledge, right? If Starfinder is to Pathfinder as Laserheart is to Daggerheart, right? Neon Heart I think is also as an option, right? Space Heart is maybe a little bit off target. Space opera as a subgenre I think is a great place to expand Daggerheart, because one of the ways that you could characterize space opera is epic fantasy in space. And there's definitely some space opera projects that are in that vein, right? We can argue that Star Wars is more fantasy than it is science fiction based on XYZ, right? That conversation is not one, or I'm not super interested in that argument, but I know that people make that argument. Astroheart, Starheart, there's going to be a number of different games or books or adaptations or hacks that are that space opera approach. And ideally, they're each going to be doing things that are a bit different, right? This one is a little more planetary romance. This one is more expanse space opera, right? Less about a bunch of alien species, more political, sociological. This one is more Star Warsy. This one is more planetary romance, right? Like John Carter of Mars kinds of stuff. And it's definitely an area that I'm interested in working. I'm interested in working in that area because I like space opera, right? I've written space opera novels. Andrew says, I can't wait to romance a planet. Campaign mechanics? ? That would be a very big countdown. a countdown the size of a planet? Question mark. So, yeah, I think in these last couple hours before the Darrington stream, right, there's a lot of different there's a lot of speculation people have been doing. We'll see what actually happens. Right, Ego the Living Planet, Andrew says. That's definitely what I was going to. Jota says, if a planet can be a Green Lantern, it can be a lover as well. All of this is true. So, right, we'll get probably some amount of information from the stream tonight. I would expect more announcements at Gen Con this August. I have a ticket to the kind of the Daggerheart showcase panel. I don't remember exactly what they're calling it, right? What's next for Daggerheart or something like that. So I will be there in the audience for that. If you're going to be in line for that event at Gen Con, you might see me. If you do, you're welcome to come up and say hi. Just be cognizant if I'm already in a conversation with somebody that I may not have a ton of time to chat. But in general, if you are at Gen Con, if you see me, you're welcome to say hi, unless I'm actively doing something else. Andrew asks, am I running any events at Gen Con? I am going to be, again, participating as part of the Writers Symposium, which is the Gen Con Writers Symposium. That is it's kind of like a convention inside of a convention. It's largely run by and for kind of the science fiction fantasy prose part of the field, right? It's a lot of writing advice, much of which is applicable to RPGs, but some of it is more specifically designed or oriented toward prose. I am on 4 panels at that convention, and let me see. I can probably pull up a link that is, here is just the events that I'm on, because their event search system is really good. So I'm going to search to Writer Symposium. And then I'm going to filter by my name. And now I'm going to give you that link. So the panels that I am presenting on are Close Quarters Combat, How to Compose a Fight, which is Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Story 101, Dialogue, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Story 101, Brainstorming, Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And Story 201, How to Develop Your Writing Process, on Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. So those are all free. You'll just want to sign up to get a ticket. They're going to be they're in the symposium. In past years, those events have largely been in the Marriott. I don't know if they will necessarily be there this year, but the symposium programming is generally kind of all in the same area. So if you come to one of my panels early in the con and you like it, there's a lot more stuff that's going to be in that same vein that you can sign up for that other people are presenting for the symposium. So I'm excited about that. My Gen Con is going to be those events, going to the Daggerheart thing for Darrington. Unfortunately, the timing does not work for me to go to much of the other Darrington Press stuff in terms of their designing for Daggerheart, GMing, playing workshops, and those workshops are all pretty limited in numbers. And while I would love to be in that room, it's probably better for Daggerheart if other people are in that seat compared to me, because those are then going to be people who are going to be able to benefit more from that information. I would love in future years to do programming about Daggerheart, whether that is in collaboration with Darrington or kind of separately on my own, because I have a lot of opinions and things to share. And Esmond says, I bet you could cover most of the Daggerheart sci-fi variant rules in a campaign frame. It wouldn't take too much. Absolutely. I think a campaign frame is a pretty good scale at which to operate in terms of, here's a pitch for a still very epic fantasy feeling, but in space campaign frame. Andrew says, man, if only there was something like that in the works. I know, right? If only there was plotting happening with announcements yet to come. Folks that don't know, Andrew is one of 3 partner creator owners of the Infinite Citadel, which is a publishing company, a games publisher creating anti-ordinary games, which is a beautiful tagline. And folks, nope, that's the wrong thing. Infinite Citadel has a Patreon, and if you're a subscriber at that Patreon, you might have heard some things. And if you're a subscriber at my Patreon, you may have also heard some things. More public announcements forthcoming. So, speaking of which, this is a good time for me to remind other folks of my Patreon at patreon.com/MichaelRUnderwood. If you have not already picked up a copy of Menagerie of Mayhem, you are now in luck, because we're going to do a giveaway, because I said that there was going to be giveaways. So if you want a copy of Menagerie of Mayhem for yourself or to pass on to a friend, be cool. It's a PDF. You could send it to a bunch of people, but be cool. Just put !menagerie into the chat, and then I will use a online DX to pick a winner, and that person will get the PDF of Menagerie of Mayhem #1 and the PDF of Bastion of Hope, because I feel like being generous. So if you have one or both of them, you're welcome to pass that on to somebody else. But if you don't have either of them, then you would get both if you were a winner. And so that is that. We'll give it a couple minutes for folks to enter if they're lurking or away or things like that. Captain Cosmo says, pending a CGL upgrade, are you interested in turning these into a Foundry VTT premium module? I would love to work with people who know how to do these things to prepare and adapt anything that I do and own to all the VTTs that I can. Each of these, to my knowledge, is an extra set of work. I would love to do it, but my reading of the CGL is similar to others where I don't think currently that is allowed. And I am hoping for a clarification from Darrington of whether that's the case. And if it is the case, I think it would probably be good for the game if that policy was modified to allow third-party materials using the CGL to be adapted and presented in paid form for these VTTs, because a lot of people play online, and I think Daggerheart will grow more if there is robust support of CGL material for VTTs. I don't know how necessarily Darrington is going to accomplish that, but I think it's something that they should probably pursue, right? I don't get to dictate terms to them, but I do think it's a good idea. Yeah, I don't expect an update about that on today's stream. It might be a thing that's coming at Gen Con. It might come between then. I do not have special information about that. The giveaway command is !menagerie, like so. And I'm going to take a drink while I give people the chance to enter. Okay, there's an entry. And I'm guessing we might get one from Adventure Lies Ahead, depending. Alternatively, Adventure Lies Ahead was just asking for other people's benefit. There we go. So we've got a couple of entries now. We'll give it another minute or two to recap. I love Daggerheart. Getting to make Daggerheart compatible material and build on the work that I did as a freelancer additional designer for the Daggerheart core book has been genuinely life-changing. And I am so grateful both to Spencer and Rowan and Elise and Darrington Press more generally for bringing me in to be a contributor to the core book and the other projects for Daggerheart that I've contributed to. I had a wonderful experience working with those folks. I'm very proud of the game that Darrington has published that I got to contribute to. I love creating Daggerheart compatible stuff, creating for use with the game. Working on Drakkenheim has been amazing. The book is going to be great. I am so hyped for people to get their hands on it because I think it's going to provide a lot of people with a lot of the kinds of things that they have been asking for. I'm not going to get too specific there because I don't want to blow up Ghostfire's spot in terms of specific marketing points that they articulate about the forthcoming book. And I'm very grateful to everyone who has been subscribing and supporting over on my Patreon, which is a lot of the folks here, and then many other folks who watch on YouTube or just read the Patreon, some of folks who are colleagues, some are other creators in the Daggerheart compatible space, and folks from a variety of backgrounds. I think that the future for Daggerheart is very bright. There are some things that can make it even better. And I'm hoping that the stars align to create new opportunities and make this be a game that it's not about replacing another game. It's about having, for me, it's not about replacing another game. It's about having a game with a strong play and creator community that facilitates a range of play aesthetics to help people have the kind of fun that they're looking for and to have that creative fulfillment and to be able to tell stories, to share our own perspectives on the world, and to argue for the kind of world that we want. Okay, we have a few entries. This is going to be the last call. I'm going to give it another few moments, and then I'm going to go to my online dice roller DX. And Esmond says, apparently Daggerheart is the 6th most popular TTRPG right now, about tied with Drawsteel and Nimble 5e, if Bob Worldbuilder's recent informal poll is to be believed, though I don't think that poll represents the strength of the player community. I think truly polling how popular one RPG is compared to another outside of D&D is probably still the most popular, especially if we're just talking like English language, because in other languages, different games are more or less popular, right? Call of Cthulhu is very popular in Japan. Jubensha as a game design tradition is very popular in China, and I think growing in East and Southeast Asia. The Brazilian TTRPG scene is very much its own vibrant thing, primarily in Brazilian Portuguese. And there's a variety of games that are more or less popular in different ways and different forms in Europe, right? Germany has a lot of Shadowrun. Germany also, I believe, Dragonbane is Swedish, I believe, right? So there's different games that are more popular in the Nordics / Scandinavia / however we want to categorize that region. Daggerheart has reached an incredible level of popularity very quickly, so I'm very grateful for that, and I'm excited to keep being a part of that and contributing to the game's growth and health as much as I can in ways that I can. So that is enough of a filibuster. So now I can pick our victor. We have 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Captain Cosmo is our winner of Menagerie of Mayhem and Bastion of Hope. So, Captain Cosmo, I'm going to send you a Twitch whisper right after I finish the stream to check in with you on what the best way to get you those PDFs is going to be. Magdalena says, Daggerheart looks like it hit top 5 of tables offered at Gen Con this year in the schedule so far. That about fits what I have heard. And I think that there is plenty of room to grow, though I also love that there's so many different games run at Gen Con, right? I don't want Daggerheart to become the one game everybody plays, because I don't want to only play one game. And I think people will get more out of games if you're able to go to different games for different things. Campaign frames and other stuff will let Daggerheart adapt into different spaces, but there are some things that it's just not designed for, and that if you wanted to play a game that's designed for that, you are probably better equipped starting with a new game or finding another game that already does it, rather than trying to hack Daggerheart in that direction. But that's just my opinion. So, thank you all so much for hanging out with me today to celebrate Daggerheart's birthday and to get to kind of wax poetic a bit about what the game has meant for me and what creating for Daggerheart has meant for me kind of before the game's release and since. So thank you to Adventure Lies Ahead, One, Jota Pe Corvuja, Captain Cosmo, Esman, Magmalena, Andrew Bowman. Trying to go quickly here, so apologies for anybody that I somehow managed to omit. DM Rawlings. Turns out we said a lot of things in the stream. So everybody that I mentioned, everybody else who was lurking, everybody who is watching later on Twitch or on YouTube, I genuinely wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for the incredible support of folks like you, patrons, people who've picked up my other, who've picked up Menagerie of Mayhem, Bastion of Hope, who have gotten excited about the game, who have asked me questions about the game and given me feedback about how they've used things that I've made, whether that's stuff that was made for the core book or adventures or any of my own stuff. I'm truly, genuinely almost now beginning to almost choke up about it. Really grateful, because the world is bad in many ways, and having a positive thing to be able to create for and be excited about has meant the world to me. And I want to keep that going as much as I can and build on it. So thank you from the very bottom of my heart to all of you. And I will try to see you next week if I can carve out enough time to do another stream. Otherwise, definitely picking back up in June. And more exciting Daggerheart news, not just from Darrington Press, I imagine, but for sure from me in the future. So we'll see you around. Take care. Where's my ending? Here it is.